Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing an autopsy on a dead internet and looking at exactly how AI and zero-click algorithms destroyed search. Let's dive right in because what we're talking about today is essentially the end of the web you grew up with. It's really gone. Search engines have completely collapsed as tools for human discovery. They've been replaced by this closed-loop system where AI just generates, scrapes, and consumes its own content. So we're going to unpack exactly how artificial intelligence and zero-click algorithms didn't just break search, but absolutely destroyed it. Okay, so the cracks really started showing to the public in the most bizarre ways imaginable. Remember May 2024? If you asked Google why cheese keeps sliding off your pizza, it literally told you to put non-toxic glue in your sauce, presented as absolute fact. The source? An 11-year-old Reddit troll post that the AI just scraped and elevated. And it didn't stop there. People asking how many rocks they should eat were told by Google AI that geologists at UC Berkeley, specifically a Dr. Joseph Granger, recommend eating at least one small rock a day. It pulled that straight from a 2021 satirical article by The Onion. Now, you might hear this and laugh. I mean, it's totally absurd. But these aren't just funny little glitches. They're actually fatal symptoms of a much, much darker reality. To really grasp why this is happening, you gotta wrap your head around one staggering reality. A 2024 report showed that over 50% of all internet traffic is bots. 50%! Let that sink in for a second. For every real, breathing person online like you and me, there is an automated machine looking at the exact same stuff. And it's not looking to learn, it's looking to game the system. We're living in a reality where you are no longer the consumer of the internet. You are the training data. And that brings us to the core of this whole investigation, the dead internet theory. This isn't some wacky fringe idea anymore. It is our actual, current operating reality. Google has quietly mutated from this incredibly useful search engine into a closed-loop echo chamber. It's a terrifying paradox, honestly. Platforms that were originally built to filter human content into useful search results are now overwhelmingly populated by content designed by bots, analyzed by bots, and then finally spit out to humans. The deep irony here is that Google actually tried to fix this, and it backfired catastrophically. In March 2024, they rolled out this massive update. The promise sounded beautiful. They were going to deprioritize low-quality spam, mass-generated pages, and expired domains to basically clean up the web. But the reality? Oh man. Overnight, the standard, totally legitimate tactics independent creators had used for years suddenly became actively harmful. Real, human-run sites found their organic self-promotion flagged as spam. Years of hard work and high rankings were wiped out in a literal second. To put a human face on that destruction, just think about the number 91%. That is the amount of Google traffic lost practically overnight by Housefresh. They're a completely human-tested review site. And across the board, studies showed over 80% of independent niche sites lost massive chunks of traffic between December 2023 and August 2024. It was the digital equivalent of dropping a giant corporate billboard right in front of a local mom-and-pop hardware store. The humans are still there, for sure, but the algorithm ensures nobody's ever going to find them. So while independent human creators were getting crushed, the bots pivoted at lightning speed to a tactic called parasite SEO. Since Google's algorithm is essentially obsessed with domain ranking, major corporations and massive bot networks just started flooding trusted, high-authority sites, places like Medium, LinkedIn, and Reddit, with cheap AI-generated boilerplate text. It doesn't need to be good, it doesn't even need to be original, it just piggybacks on the trusted platform's reputation to completely bypass Google's quality control. Like a parasite. But parasite SEO is honestly child's play compared to this next tactic. Welcome to the search heist. This is the exact blueprint shared proudly on X by SEO expert Jake Ward. Step 1. You use AI to export a competitor's entire sitemap. Step 2. You deploy AI to instantly write 1,800 articles based on their exact URLs and titles. Step 3. You buy up expired, high-authority zombie domains that sound like your rival, pump them full of this AI garbage, and redirect the traffic. There is zero human effort required to direct this. Bot networks run the whole shebang automatically, while the CEO is literally still drinking their morning coffee. And the outcome of this little heist? 3.6 million organic search hits. That is how much traffic Ward successfully poached from a single competitor in just 18 months. It peaked at nearly 500,000 hits in a single month. It's totally automated mass traffic theft. And because it plays perfectly into how Google currently ranks data, it works flawlessly. It's a real game changer, but in the absolute worst possible way. Now you really have to ask yourself, why on earth hasn't Google fixed this? Well, the system might actually be working exactly as intended. There's this recent study from SparkToro that found 58.5% of all Google searches are now zero-click, meaning you get your answer directly on Google's landing page and never actually click a single link. Why? Because a humbled search engine that just points you to useful websites isn't nearly as profitable as a behemoth that traps you inside its own ecosystem. Pure utility simply isn't as profitable as data retention. Which leads us to a pretty cynical realization. Google isn't really a search engine anymore. It's an all-purpose, AI-generated answer device. Teachers are already reporting that Gen Z and Gen Alpha students who've been raised on this system simply use the Google AI summary paragraph for everything. They don't click source links. They don't actually know how to navigate the web to find pages on their own. And honestly, that might be exactly what Google wants, to be the beginning, middle, and end of your entire internet experience. But people are noticing this synthetic trap, and they're looking for a way out. Seeking refuge, basically. In just 1 year, Reddit's organic Google traffic absolutely exploded, going from 132 million to over 500 million. Why Reddit? Because it's primarily text-based, driven largely by actual people rather than algorithms, and it's practically one of the last places online where you can safely assume you're talking to a real human. People were just desperate for genuine human experience. But you know, the algorithm always catches up eventually. In February 2024, Google threw down $60 million in a deal to buy Reddit's data to train its AI models. So what happens next? Well, Reddit users are already noticing a massive surge in repetitive, similarly written stories. By making Reddit's data monetarily valuable to AI, Google basically invited the exact same bot networks to flood humanity's last refuge with totally synthetic stories. And that brings us to the real existential dread of our digital future, model collapse. Let's slow down for a second here, because this is honestly terrifying. Model collapse is a crisis observed by researchers where machine learning models, having already flooded the internet with synthetic data, eventually end up training on themselves. Because they process massive amounts of data, they start absorbing all this uncurated AI-generated stuff. The errors compound, and the system's output performance just steadily and aggressively breaks down. Here is exactly how that late-stage degradation cycle plays out. Step 1. The AI processes massive amounts of its own flawed synthetic data. Step 2. The minority data, which is the actual nuanced human input, gets completely filtered out. Step 3. The flawed information repeats and amplifies. Researchers literally compare this to genetic inbreeding. The AI feeds on its own worst data, blowing up minor defects into absolute harmful synthetic noise. And the absolute wildest part of all this? Google controls 90% of global search engine traffic. 90%. Their only real competitor for query volume is YouTube, which, oh right, they also own. Because of this massive monopoly, Google is ground zero for this singularity of amplified synthetic errors. The exact same system that told you to put glue on your pizza is processing levels of data nobody else can even compete with. And that data is increasingly just composed of its own synthetic hallucinations. This isn't just some crazy theory anymore either. Europol, the European law enforcement agency, actually flashed a stark warning recently. Up to 90% of all online content could be AI generated by the end of 2026. We are speeding right toward a reality dominated by millions of ghost websites. Sites churning out endless daily articles that are never ever meant to be read by human eyes. They exist solely because Google's algorithm is watching, and the bots are just playing the game. So we're essentially standing at a final fork in the road here. On one side, you've got the free AI web, built on things like Google Gemini, where you just surrender to the AI loop. But remember, if it's free, you are the product. On the other side, there's the human web. Dedicated online veterans are jumping ship to human-only search engines like Tagi and Marginalia, which prioritize actual, organic, non-commercial content. The catch? Building that takes money. Meaning we have to rely on donations or start paying subscription fees just for the privilege of actual human interaction. Which leaves us right here. The genuine sites are sliding further and further down the page. The errors are amplifying. The internet is aggressively consuming itself. So I want to leave you with this cold, lingering question to ponder. In a fully synthetic ecosystem that is entirely designed to just promote itself, what exactly becomes of all human knowledge? Think about that the next time you search for an answer. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I'll catch you next time.